Hey now, and how are you doing? Want to welcome you to the next episode of Peace, Love, and Bring a Bat. We're bringing on Brian Blackmon today, and I can't wait to hear talking about the crabs, all the things that we're going to talk about. But really, it's about the seriousness of being in, substance disease, and really what we do to get through those things. And knowing people like Brian is definitely one of the ways that we're going to help. How are you doing today, Brian?
I'm wonderful, my friend. How are you? It's another beautiful day here in California.
Yeah, it looks like you have some sun in the background.
Yes,
That's
sir. Yes, sir.
awesome.
Yes, sir.
All right, why don't you introduce yourself to the audience and tell them a little bit about your story, and then we'll just go back and forth on some questions.
Yeah, sure, no problem. My name is Brian Blackman. I'm originally from Fort Worth, Texas. Lived in Dallas for quite a few years before moving to Southern California. Always had a dream to live out here. I'm a musician, wanted to be come out here and be a rock star. And it took me till I was 42 to make it out here. Um, Struggled with drug addiction and alcohol addiction my entire life. Moved out here, things got even more out of control than possibly at any point in my life. I decided to get sober one day. I was homeless out here I went from Venice Beach, Culver City, Woodland Hills, Canoga Park, then Huntington Beach, and was sleeping in my car, really struggling. Met an 85-year-old lady who took a chance on me. When she took a chance on me, it gave me finally this safe place, this roof over my head to finally relax a little bit, which also turned into a much darker part of my story and my addiction. I had the safe haven now, and it allowed me to really become a recluse. And besides work, I stayed in my room and just drowned myself in alcohol and drugs. And I got sober. There's a whole lot into this story that I'm sure we'll get into, but just a brief part of it. She helped me get sober, didn't kick me out, allowed me to stay here. I started making TikTok videos about her and I and our quirky 85-year-old and 45-year-old relationship. Maybe I was 46, 45. And this didn't happen until I was about 6 months sober, but it just took off and went super viral. One video ended up hitting 7 million, the next one 14 million, 23 million in total. Started live streaming, and that's when things really started to change. I started just sharing my story. Man, that's really what it comes down to, and sharing my struggles and all the things that I just was running away from and tried to stay away from, feeling not feeling like a normal person,
Hmm.
putting things in my body to mask who I was and to try to cope with life. Started sharing my story in front of 7 people. It just kept getting bigger. I just kept doing it. It just kept growing. Then turned it into the Crab Crew. I don't know if you're familiar with TikTok and live streaming, but
Yep.
I always started from the Huntington Beach Pier. I like to be outside, and show people around. So I would start out there. And this one girl one day, her name is Kari, had sent me this crab gift. Right. And this crab comes out and starts dancing on your head and kind of pinching its little pincher things, whatever. And all these people are always out watching me. And I kind of just said, "Oh, Kari gave me crabs right here on TikTok Live," and it just turned into this thing. At which point I had a P.O. box on my TikTok bio, and I started getting all this crab, just everything from socks to boxers to keychains, just anything that you could possibly imagine that was crab involved, from all around the world. I started thinking about, why was this moment significant? What is so significant about a crab? And I started doing a little research and found out they're resilient, they're adaptive, and it really fit along with how I was learning how to live in this new life of being sober. I had to learn how to become resilient and adaptive to this new way of thinking, this new way of living. So we started calling ourselves the Crab Crew.
So
And
just by coincidence, by that one gift,
yes,
that's
sir.
where it's so important. You never know who's going to walk into your life and how they're
Right.
going to show up. So
Yeah,
why
and
don't you
the
tell us
other to
about?
add to that, I don't believe personally in coincidences.
I
That
don't believe that.
moment was meant to happen for a reason, which is now has turned into what it is today, you know?
Oh, why don't you tell us a little bit about your story of, well, first how you got from Texas to California and how Elaine, who was your neighbor, and I have an Elaine in my life. My Connie. I just wrote a book when I got divorced. She started calling me up, meeting me, and then she was like, well, Sunday nights I always have a little extra pasta at night. She's an Italian woman, and
Nice.
now, every Sunday night, are you free? Did you think about something for dinner? I'm like, it's 11 o'clock in the morning, Connie. I'm hoping to get through lunch, but it really is that connection that she was looking for,
Yes,
and
sir.
so blessed to still have Connie in my life. She's in her mid to late 90s, and
Love it.
where every week she comes in, and when we had snowstorms here in New York, I said, "Don't worry, you're going to be taken care of. Don't worry."
Love it.
They were talking about things. So why don't you tell me about your story? I'd love to hear about how you got to where you're at now, and then we'll talk a little bit more about the crab mentality.
Okay. Yeah. I come from, like I said, Fort Worth, Dallas, Texas, born and raised in Fort Worth. I come from a really loving and caring, supportive family. Grew up in a Southern Baptist church, and I just never really fit in to life. I always got along with everybody. I can mold myself and shape myself to fit into any group or category. And I did that really well, but I never truly felt comfortable in my own skin. I guess is the best way to put it. I
Yeah.
just felt out of place. I'm a really big empath, and I know that word is used a lot and thrown around a lot, but what I mean by that is I truly just feel really hard and
Mm.
in a deep way. And it always confused me. The feelings were so overwhelming from other people and in my own that it was almost too much for me to deal with. At 13, I had my first drink and I was able to relax immediately. It
Mm.
was just instantly. And it didn't start there. It didn't start till I was about in the ninth grade. Not about, but in the ninth grade, I started smoking pot and drinking a lot with, my friends in high school and the
Yeah.
weekends. And it quickly, by the my sophomore year, it turned into cocaine and LSD and mushrooms and pills and just all of it. It was about my end of my sophomore year. I was turned on to heroin, and that became number one. You know, all throughout my high school, well, sophomore, junior, and senior year, I was really, really bad on heroin and cocaine. Really, all of it, but those two things were the main part of my
Yeah,
story
well,
at
it's
that
it's
time.
the natural progression in many people in life.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it hit me hard. Like I said, it was these chemicals and the drinking and stuff. It just made me feel quote unquote normal. Right? I could literally take a deep breath and just relax. So I started really getting into a lot of trouble. Police,
Hmm.
parents, family. It kept progressing. I started playing guitar in a local band out there, and you know how that goes, the sex, drugs, and rock and roll.
Yep.
Just, I was living
There's a
living the
reason why
life.
people go, lose themselves that way.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. My first rehab, if I'm not mistaken, I always that part of my life is kind of a blur. But I think my first rehab was in my senior year of high school. I had dropped out, got my GED, and I think right before that, I'd gone to my first 30-day rehab for heroin addiction. My parents struggled to do everything they could to help me, and nothing seemed to work. I would try to get sober just to help my mom out, or put less wrinkles on her face, if you will, let her sleep better at night, and
Yep.
then to get a job or, to keep a job that I had, I was always bouncing around between the Taco Bells, the waiting tables, all that kind of stuff. Then got a job at Southwestern Bell at the time. I was like the youngest person to work in this business and in that location. and I was a really bad heroin addict, and I was getting into a lot of trouble at work. They found out, sent me to a rehab, came out to Newport Beach, California, realized I was in California, and like, man, I'm so blessed to be here, but I messed that up, ended up getting sent back to Texas, and that just my whole life, that's just all it's been, in and out of jail. Then did 2 years in prison. I got busted by the FBI, was unable to do right as far as my probation was concerned. Ended up doing 2 years in a Texas prison, got out, and was able to stay somewhat sober. I started working for my aunt and uncle's mobile lab and x-ray company, and I started getting in with all these doctors. And so
Mm,
I figured out, oh my God, my back is just killing me out of nowhere.
yeah.
So, the pain pills got in, and that
Yep.
that I stayed away from everything else, drinking from time to time, but was able to pass drug test is what I was doing. Again,
Right, because
masking.
at that time it's all prescribed, and which
Yeah,
is one of the
yeah,
things that when we talk about and that's where I work on the stigmas that so many people picture, the needle and the spoon and all that stuff. But
yeah.
so many of the people who have overdosed and things like that, it was back pain, right? Because back in the day, you could get all the pain medications. Hey, man, I got it. And then you go to another doctor, right? They weren't, monitoring that. Where
Right.
I grew up, right here where I'm living, Massapequa, right? It's generally a white color, uh, neighborhood. And guess what? It was the number one overdose death capital for a long time. I don't know
I
that it's
believe it.
still that, but that's what it is. We all have these images, but it's not the images that really happen.
Right, right. No, that's exactly right. And that's one thing. We'll get into that here in just a little bit. I want you to keep that point because that's one thing I definitely want to talk about is the thought of, most drug addicts and alcoholics come from
Yeah,
something like that. So let's keep that in mind. I definitely love talking about that part of it. So yeah, man, it's prescription. I'm okay. I'm good.
yeah,
It was also a way for me to lie and,
sure,
stay
sure.
messed up and to pass and get through my probation at the time or parole at the time, actually. So it just really never stopped except for the time that I was in prison. I think it was 18 months total. And that was the only time that I've ever been straight-laced sober, but it wasn't a happy place to be sober in, you know
Right.
what I mean?
The one place you probably needed a little bit more help.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. And so what happened next? It just continued to get
Yeah.
worse.
So how did you end up meeting, your savior, your Elaine?
Elaine, okay, yeah, yeah, we can jump right into that. I a little bit of a backstory. I just always had this desire to live in California, right? Toxic relationship. I finally um had a girlfriend that ended up going to jail as well. And during that time, I wrote out a list, and I still have it to this day in a notebook of every possible thing that I had to do and criterias that I had to meet, money I had to pay back, probation I had to get off of, just all these things. It turned out to be the front and the back side of this notebook, spiral notebook that I had, and everything from the U-Haul that would fit my stuff in it. Is it going to hook up to my little electric car that I had at the time? Just everything I could possibly imagine. And I still have it to this day in a little plastic frame. I wrote California awaits you, California needs you, California awaits
Nice.
you, all the way around this list. And while my girlfriend at the time was in jail, I kept every day I would try to do something to mark, one of those items off that list. Some days I would get something done. It would go months. I would not do anything. And it took about a year. And I landed in Venice. And like I said, I made the trip from Venice, Santa Monica, Culver City, Woodland Hills, Canoga Park, then Huntington Beach. And sleeping in my car, working two jobs in LA when I was told, hey, it's going to be kind of hard for you to find a place to rent online around here. What a lot of people do is they put signs out in their yard for rooms to rent. They want to keep it local. Well, I didn't know that. So I was sleeping in my car, taking showers in the little surfer showers down here,
Yep.
brushing my teeth and doing all that in the bathrooms down here and, smoking meth and taking pills and drinking before I'd even, make my way to LA for work, would come back home, start on the numbered streets, and I just started calling and looking at every place that would let me in. None of them really vibed with me. I used to say that I didn't vibe with them, but it turns out I
Right.
was, I probably hadn't slept in 4 or 5 days. I probably smelled of alcohol, and so they probably were like, "Oh, we don't want this guy in here." One day, I parked in front of this house that I'm currently in, and there was a sign out front, and I called it, and it was Elaine. She told me that she had somebody that was coming to look at it tomorrow morning, but would give me the opportunity to come by when she got back from dinner, to just look at it and talk to her for a minute. So I knew one person out here. She let me come over, take a shower, cleaned up. I've got tattoos. I could tell this was an older, elderly lady. And so I wanted to kind of clean up for her. I do have some couth and morals
Right.
and values to know how to present myself when I need to, right? So I did all that and I came over here and I met her. And it was the most interesting thing. My favorite family member my whole life had been my great grandmother. And when she opened the door, she reminded me so much of my great grandmother, the hair, the size, the age. It was just everything. It was kind of freaky. Well, she invites me in, shows me the room, and then starts telling me part of her story, which she had 3 daughters. The oldest one died of a brain aneurysm, which was possibly caused by her alcoholism.
Mm.
And then she lost 2 grandsons due to fentanyl overdoses,
Wow.
right? And her other 2 daughters were in recovery or still in recovery. So she knew a little bit about it. And I'm sitting here and she's telling me that she had this heart transplant and all this stuff. And I'm sitting here going, like fighting tears while she's telling me all this. I'm like, going, why am I in this situation? This is too, all these
Yeah.
things are lining up in
Right.
the strangest way.
That's where I believe, Les Brown talks about it, and he says God sometimes acts anonymously through people, and you
Yes,
don't know
sir.
who they are, right?
Yes, sir.
I'm sure that, and we'll go a little bit deeper, but you just don't know who's going to show up in your life and how they're
Yep.
going to show up in your life.
Absolutely. 100%. And it was a very intense and emotional moment for me. And all I'm thinking is, man, I'm just so tired.
Yeah.
I'm just so tired. It wasn't about, I wasn't even thinking about getting sober. I just wanted a roof over my head.
Yeah.
So at this point, she told me my parents had no idea that I was homeless. I didn't want to worry my mom anymore, put her through any more stuff because I knew she was already worrying about me being out here alone by myself. And so I kind of kept all that from her. And when I got done talking to Elaine, I got in my car and I just broke down and I told my mom what was going on. She said, "What are you gonna do now?" And I was like, "I'll call you tomorrow whenever she lets me know." She had this one guy to come look at it. And so Elaine told me that she would let me know the next day. I go across the street, get in my car, go back to sleep. Well, sleep. I got up and went to work the next morning in LA and I never heard from her. My mom's blowing me up all day. Um, Elaine's not calling me or texting me. So I get off work, I come back home. I got in front of her house and I called her and I said, "Hey, it's Brian. I met you yesterday. I never heard from you today." And she said, "Well, that's because the guy was a friend of my daughter's from high school, and I'm gonna go ahead and let him move in. Basically, have a nice life." Man, I just broke down. I was like, why did all that happen yesterday
Yeah.
for this no to happen now? I thought it was in the bag, but I wasn't putting all my eggs in one basket at the same
Mhm.
time. So I called my mom, told my mom what was happening, and her words to me were, "Brian, what are you going to do now? How are you doing this? This is killing me. I don't know what you're going to do." And the only thing that came out of my mouth was, "Mom, this is just part of my story. It's just the next chapter. I'm not going to be homeless forever. I'm just going to start on the next street tomorrow. No big deal." As I'm fighting tears, my mom said, "Okay, call me tomorrow. Let me know." It was about 10 minutes later, my phone rang and it was Elaine. And she said, "Are you looking for short-term or long-term rent?" And I said, "Ma'am, I'm looking for long-term. I'm looking for a place to rest my head." And she said, "Well, that guy wants short-term. I'm looking for long-term. Let me call you tomorrow." And I was just like, "Oh, why can't you just tell me now? Just tell me now." I said, "Yes, ma'am, that's fine." So I did the same thing. I went across the street and went back to sleep in my car. It was about 6:30, 7 o'clock that morning. My phone rang. and it was Elaine, and she said, "Are you sleeping in your car?" I was like, "No, ma'am." And she said, "Be honest with me. Are you asleep in your car?" And I said, "Yes, I am." She said, "Well, why don't you come over here?" I said, "Okay." I've never gotten dressed and ready and put myself together so fast in my life, man. Took all the cardboard down from my windows, jumped in my car, or got dressed, jumped back in my car, and came across the street. And when I pulled up, there she was standing on the front porch in her robe, welcoming me home.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, it's pretty
No,
wild, man.
that's why it's God, and how bad did you want it, right? You know,
Right.
they give a. I really believe the universe gives us those opportunities that you don't know until you
Yes, sir.
know.
Yes, sir. And
Yeah,
here's the thing. One of my favorite things about this entire part of that situation was I know with every cell in my body, with every fiber of my being, that if I would have on the phone with my mom said, F this is never going to work out. I'm never going to find a fucking place. No one's going to ever let me rent. I'm just stuck here, blah, 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 blah. And had that just aggressive, nasty, negative attitude and words coming out of my mouth about it, I believe with every fiber of my being that that phone call from her 10 minutes later would not have happened.
there really is something to that law of attraction, right? It's putting
Absolutely.
it out there and doing it. It's the things that make us focus.
Yes, sir.
And then, like here, so now you've created the Crab Crew because of that one girl who did it. Why don't you tell us a
Yeah.
little bit about the Crab Crew?
Well, so like I said, it was during the TikTok live streaming, and it just kept growing and kept growing, and more people wanted to be a part of the Crab Crew. And I'd changed. Excuse me. I'd done TikTok for I don't know, maybe over a year at this point. TikTok was getting ready to get shut down. Made some changes. Went did the YouTube thing. Did the favorited thing. Came back to TikTok, and people just kept staying with it and kept following me and kept wanting to be a part of what I was doing and what others that were a part of it and be a part of their lives with it as well. It was overwhelming. And to be honest with you, it still is overwhelming that people have grown to be um, dependent on each other. I have a Discord as well, and I can't spend a ton of time on it, but I'll see my Discord notifications that somebody's really going through something. One of the Crab Crew followers, family members, not followers. It's turned into a family, man.
Sure.
And they're helping each other out. They're like, "Oh my God, so and so, I got you. So and so, I got you. Here's this. I'm wishing you love, sending you prayers. All this stuff." And it's mind-boggling. And so I started thinking, well, I'm getting all these messages about how people thoroughly enjoy what I'm doing, and it helps them in the morning. I've got two shows, one in the morning and one in the evening, and they just love drinking their coffee and seeing my wackad. I get called a wackadoodle all the
Yep.
time because dude, there's something that happens when that go live button
Well, it's that
goes off.
authentic stuff. You're
Yes,
not trying
sir.
to be somebody special, you know,
No,
uh,
sir.
and that's really what it comes down to. People want authenticity. They know when you tell a story of what you went through, they relate, and
Yes.
some people, yeah, it's entertainment, don't get me wrong, but
Sure.
people who are your people, they relate. They're like, yeah, I got a story like that,
Yes, sir.
and what did you do? So what are some of the things that you do that help people and the resources that you use? That's the most important part. uh
Well, I think that for me personally, when you talk about the resources, um, I started going to meetings to help me get through all of this. And
yeah,
it got to the point where after about 7 or 8 months of me doing meetings, I was going in feeling like an 8 or a 9, right out
yeah.
of a 10 feeling. And all of a sudden, I started noticing I was coming out of the meetings feeling a little bit less joyful or grateful. And I could not, for the life of me, figure out why. And I'm one of those fixer type people. You give me a problem, I want to figure it out. I don't want it to just linger. I want to figure out what's going on. And so I started really tuning into the messages that people were sending out when they would share at the meetings. And I found out that no matter how much, and this is not everywhere, this is just my experience from the meetings that I was going to. A lot of people, they lost their wife, they lost their girlfriend, they lost their job, they lost their car, they didn't have a driver's license. Everything had crumbled, right, due to their drugs and alcohol,
Mhm.
their alcohol and drug addiction. but they decided to get sober for whatever reason, and they got all these things back. But what I'm really hearing is they're just waiting for that other shoe to drop at any moment. And
Yeah.
that started really bothering me. I was like, how could you have lost all this stuff, been in the depths of hell, got it all back because you chose to do so? You've worked hard to maintain your sobriety, yet you're just waiting at any moment everything is going to crumble and fall apart. And I just couldn't understand that my brain, my intuition, my understanding of life doesn't comprehend that way of thinking. When I overcame what I was going through at the time, it was like, man, this is a whole new path,
Yeah.
right? This is
Well,
things are
and
opening
and that's
up.
that mindset, right? Because some people still feel the pressure of the rest of your life versus, just like, all right, man, that was a different lane, right? That was my rear view mirror, and there's the windshield going in front of me. So,
Yes, sir.
that's a mindset thing. That's awesome.
It is. And I knew that if I was going to make this change, what happened with the sobriety part of it, it was 857 days ago today. So like 2 years, 3 months, and some days, right? I was upstairs, I was brushing my teeth, and you know how when you're talking, you know that you're talking, but
Yep.
you can hear that voice inside your head too, kind of telling you what to say next, what not to say.
Yep.
But then there's that feeling in your heart that's kind of saying, calm down, chill out, take a breath. But then there's that other part of you that's like going, well, don't say that or do say this. So all these things are going on at once. So your mind, your body, and your spirit, and then what's actually coming out of your mouth. All of those voices while I was brushing my teeth lined up. There was no chitter chatter of this, that, and the other. It was everything lined up so peacefully. And all I heard throughout my spirit was, you are worth it.
Ooh.
That's it. I had met a guy a few months before that in a parking lot of a grocery store. I'm a huge Lamborghini fan. They've always been my favorite cars. I walk out of the grocery store, just got off of work, and I was a wreck. I was a wreck. I started talking to this guy about the Lamborghini. He said, told me about it, all these kind of things, and then said, you know what? He looked at me dead square in the eyes and said, it was a gift of sobriety. And at that
Ooh.
moment, I was thinking, why did he just tell me this? Clearly, he probably knew something was going on, right? And he told me about this place in Huntington Beach that he had got sober at. And it had, I don't know, roughly 30 years. So that sparked it right there. And months go by, and I tried to stop doing it. I'd get 5, 6, 7, 8. I think I got 9 days total, and just kept relapsing and going backwards. And then that morning, while brushing my teeth, that's what happened, man. And I made that decision right then and there not to do this for my mom, not to do it for my family, not to do it for a job or to get a job or any other reason other than I wanted to do it. So you talk about the resources. For me, first of all, I had to have that overwhelming desire to stop.
Sure.
I could not put this on anybody else but myself. Doing it for my mom is going to be temporary. Doing it for a job, I know how to mask all that stuff already, so it had to be for me. And once I made that decision, not that it got easy, but I had a path laid out,
Sure. Yeah, because
a,
you
a
need that path.
groundwork, if you will.
Yep.
you know, I knew that if I went to meetings and I tried to get some help, I could get the help I needed. I didn't know where it was going to come from. I didn't know how. I started looking into my insurance and rehab facilities and got sent to this one that accepted me. It was a sober living home, and there were guys relapsing in front of me, bringing drugs into the house. I was there for 3 days when my neighbor came and picked me up, and that's when I really got serious, and that's when the withdrawals kicked in. And so I locked myself in my bedroom for 30 days, man.
Wow.
And well, I don't recommend that to anybody. That is
Right.
not the proper way to do it. I just knew from my experiences through
Mhm.
getting sober in the past or trying to, and all the different rehabs and jails and withdrawals that I've gone through, that I knew what I could tolerate and what I couldn't.
Right.
And little did I know how much fentanyl is in methamphetamines these days.
Yeah.
And so when I came off of it, man, I tell people this all the time, my fingertips and my toes literally had bruises on them from I was clawing the carpet, just
Mm.
crying, begging God to just take it away. But I was so hell bent. And I told Elaine, poor Elaine, I told her that I was going on tour with a band all up and down California for 30 days.
Mm.
So I didn't have to tell her. I didn't want her to,
To worry it, right? With her background, with
yes,
her family's
yes,
background.
yes. So it was about halfway into the 30 days, maybe 15, 16 days. I came downstairs and I knew that I had the possibility of getting kicked out,
Hmm.
but I wanted it so bad. I knew that I had to start being honest, not with just myself, but with everybody around me if I wanted the help. You never know what doors are going to open.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing is you don't know what's gonna one stick, but also what's gonna be the door that opens that you need the help. We can't do this
Right.
ourselves. I mean, that's the real part of that story.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And so her words to me were, thank you for telling me. I
Hmm.
love you. You're welcome here. I'm sorry you're going through this. Go back upstairs, do whatever you got to do. I'll be right here. Let me know what I can do.
Wow.
So that's exactly what I did. Went back upstairs and I don't think I took maybe but 4 or 5 showers that entire month. It was so bad that I couldn't even eat. I mean, it was bad. And it was probably even out of all the heroin withdrawals I've gone through and Vicodin withdrawals I've gone through, there was something about this one with the alcohol and the fentanyl and the methamphetamines and all the junk that's in it that really just deteriorated my body.
Sure.
And it was really rough to go through. And so I started realizing that if I stayed grateful for five simple things. I started just really looking around and analyzing what was making me happy, what was making me anxious, what was making me sad. I've never really suffered from depression, so I don't really know what that feels like, but sadness, overwhelmed, these feelings are coming back. Somebody made a really amazing analogy that just stuck with me when I was first getting sober.
Hmm.
If we're driving a truck our entire lives, right, in our addiction and alcohol. We're throwing problem A, B, C, and D, and all of it in the back of the bed of that truck. We decide to get sober, we slam on the brakes, and every bit of that lands right in our lap.
Sure.
That's exactly what happened, man. All these feelings from when I was a kid and not understanding how to be in this body with all these feelings. How am I going to deal with it now sober? So all this stuff came up, and I realized that if I could take myself out of worry and fear and just stayed grateful that I have another chance at life today. I've got a roof over my head, I've got shoes on my feet, I've got clothes on my back, I've got food in my stomach. And those five things, I don't think you can be successful in anything in life without those five fundamental, basics in life.
Yeah, no, for sure.
And so at that point, I started making that my morning routine. I don't touch my cell phone for at least 30, 40 minutes when I get up. I don't watch horror movies. I don't watch negative movies. I don't watch the news. I don't, sit there and just doom scroll on my phone. I'm on my phone a lot because it's what I do, but
Sure.
um, I don't let people into my life that aren't, um, don't take directions from somebody that's not been where you're going
Hmm.
type attitude. And once I started just feeling that way and understanding that that's how I wanted to live my life, and I would rather be enjoying my solitude and learning how to grow and be a better Brian every minute of the day, just even if it's 1% better. That's like compound interest, right? So every day it's
100%.
just
One
it's
percent,
just
right? It's Kaizen thinking. I mean, that's this is
right.
I don't know if you ever heard of that. But it
Have
really is just change yourself just 1%, and then you've changed, made huge changes.
yeah,
That
you look back on it a year later and you're like, oh my
yep,
God, I've
yep,
accomplished this.
yep,
And so I guess the resources that I read a lot. I'm always reading something. The last book I read was As a Man Thinketh, Think and Grow
yep.
Rich, Becoming the Better Version of Yourself, just all these the positive thinking and learning how to pull all that negative, depressing, um, thoughts that I've been telling myself for so long. And that comes from being influenced by what your parents were telling you, what the TV was telling you, what your teachers were telling you, your preacher, your best friend, their parents, your grandparents. You know, you've got all these
Yep.
influences, billboards and movies and telling you how you should be and how you should act and how you should look. And I started thinking that, you know what, none of that even matters because as within, so without.
100%.
And if I keep feeding myself the best information, loving, kind, get fear. You know, love destroys fear. Um, Resilience defeats anxiety. You know,
Yep.
there's just all these different ways to look at these things. And so I just stay to myself, man. And even though I've got a huge following and a lot of people that I spend time with on the live streams on a day-to-day basis, I don't let people, places, or things destroy my joy anymore, man. It's
I
too
love that.
important. If I were to lose it all right now, I know that I'm still gonna be, okay.
You're still worthy. Yep.
Yes,
Yeah.
sir. Yes, sir.
So how can everybody find you?
Right now my TikTok is just Brian Blackman, and if you go to the Brian Blackman or on Linktree, there's in my bio, there's a link tree, and it's got all my social media on it. It's got the ABC 7 news
Yep.
story that came out, did a story with myself and Elaine, and LA Times did a big story on us. And like I said, all my other social media is there. And now I'm working on a course for Crab Crew, clean, resilient, adaptive belief,
Mm.
right? And how to become a better version of yourself. It's a 6-week course that I'm working on. And you can find it at crabcrewlife.com here in the next probably 2 weeks. It'll be up and running, but
All right.
merchandise there, and you can support it that way.
All right. Well, that's around when the episode will come out. So, it'll be a great time, and I'll obviously share all that stuff with you. But I want to say thank you so much for your time. Uh,
Yeah, thank you.
I really appreciate everything, and just keep going good. And if there's any way that I could do to support you,
Yes,
in
sir.
any way besides this podcast, let me know, man. This was a great story,
Yeah,
and
I really enjoyed it too. Thank you.
I appreciate it.
Thank you so much, man. I appreciate you.
All right. You have a great day.
Okay, you too, man. Bye.